There are many ways to deal with anger. There's groups you can go, anger management. You can go to a therapist to help you deal with your stuff. As the old saying goes, either you face your stuff or you stuff your face. So we all have a little bit of,
Say it.
it
Anger.
doesn't necessarily start with anger. It can start with frustration. From a frustration, it leads to, annoyance. And from an annoyance, it leads to anger. We've all experienced it. We've all been there. The question is, what's the best way to deal with it? So if you're in therapy and you got upset at your spouse, or your spouse got upset with you, and that led you to becoming upset, um, there are different ways and means how to handle and to deal with this. Of course, the Jewish way is very unique. We start with the concept of our sages that say that someone who is angry is like an idolater. Why? What does idolatry mean? Idolatry means a lack of belief or trust, faith in God. Well, in the moment of our anger, the reason why we're angry is because we feel that God's not there. Because if God was there, what would you be angry about? Right? What would you be angry about? Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zich and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We're almost coming full circle in conclusion of the 25th letter in the Igeres HaKodesh. 25th letter in the Holy Letters of the Alter Rebbe. This one, it's coming full circle, speaking about anger and how to properly deal with anger. As our sages say, that in the moment of anger, it's as if you're an idolater, right? Now, how do we understand that exactly? In the moment of anger, you're like an idolater? Why? So says the Alter Rebbe, this is only when it comes to mundane things that we get angry about. Because everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven. Meaning, if it's a heavenly thing that you're upset about, that's a different story, right? What does that mean? Well, the Torah tells us about Moses. He got angry. But what did he get angry about? The lack of integrity of the Jewish people. So to get angry at someone's lack of integrity, that's a different story, right? That can be permissible and even maybe an appropriate thing. Because that means, first of all, you care about another person's behavior. Secondly, that, people are doing the right thing. That would be fine. But that's not why people usually get angry. Why do people get angry is because they are hurt by what is happening to them. Either they got someone spoke to them in a disrespectful way. Someone did something to them that lessened their possessions, took something from them, right? Or damaged something that's theirs, right? Someone rear ends you and right? You're,
Someone insults you.
Someone insults you, exactly. So that has, right? It's
in public.
in public. So that's why is that mundane, not heavenly? Is because what's paining you and what you're angry about is the insult that has been hurled to you rather than the lack of integrity of that person.
Yeah.
That's what's bothering you. The fact that you're such and such, right? That's all what's bothering usually the individual. Usually what's bothering is that they feel hurt. That means it's a lack of faith that what happened is something that was meant to happen. So let's get back to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, which the Alter Rebbe is coming here to explain, which he never actually mentioned till now. And the Baal Shem Tov uses an example of someone who is praying and an uncircumcised heathen, a pagan, non-believer, is disrupting the individual. Right. Now, here's actually a perfect example. So, disrupting the individual. So, to rebuke the person would be what? Senseless. Not a believer. That person is disrupting you. Now, imagine you're praying and you're sitting in synagogue, and someone who is a non-believer is disrupting you because you're praying, right? And they don't believe in it. They're actually, antagonistic towards it. So they're being disruptive. So are you to rebuke them? No. You know why? Because they don't believe. So what's it going to help to rebuke them? Let out steam? What would that be about?
Yourself.
Myself, right? Leave me alone. Don't bother me. It's all about you, right? And sometimes we deal with our kids that way, right? Leave me alone. I'm busy. Now, that's not a disruptive heathen, a pagan, right? Your child. But here, there's no point to rebuke. So then what do you do in this situation, in the midst of your prayers? How do you deal with this? Right? So the Alter Rebbe says, wow, you should intensify your prayers in such a way that you don't even hear this person, as if they don't exist. How do you do that? How would you come to that? Right? Not to pay attention to them. When you'll meditate in that moment about what's going on over here, what's the meditation? That what's going on over here is that God took from his holy divine energy, he put it into Klippa. A spark of that holiness is now trapped in Klippa, right? In the state of exile, in other words, Klippa meaning the shell, that's where it is. And now it's vesting itself in this pagan to give that person a power to speak. And why would God do that? Why? How come? No? Why?
Oh, you're looking for an answer?
Huh?
To give the Jew merit to...
That I should recognize that truth.
Uh-huh.
I should recognize that truth. I recognize that this is coming from God. Yes, in Klippa. Yes, it's in exile, the holiness of God that's there. but God's giving him the power
Mhm.
for one reason, that I should recognize that so I could now exercise my choice. And what's my choice? To concentrate on my prayers in such a way that as if this person doesn't exist.
But suppose somebody gives you, for argument's sake, an insult. And to make it worse publicly. When you're not praying. When you're not, yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that you should be praying all the time. even
No,
when
this
you're
is
not
an
looking
example.
At a sitter or whatever.
I know, but
walking
one
on the
second.
street, et cetera, et cetera. But suppose you're not doing that. Suppose you're.
So let us.
In a.
I got it. Shimalay, you don't have to describe it. It's clear. So you can do the same thing. Think for a moment that this is coming from the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God. A spark of that has now been put into klipa, into a shell, that the divine presence of God is in exile, but it is from God, right? That's now given the power of speech to this person to say what they said. So that means, obviously, I was meant to hear this. So now the question is, what do I do with it? Right? So this is the point. If it was meant for me, so I'm not going to get angry. What am I going to get angry about? God meant it for me. Maybe it's not what I wanted, but that's irrelevant to the fact, right? It was meant for me. So now I have freedom of choice, total choice now on how to respond. So when you're in your prayers, that's the example he's giving over here. That means just to concentrate even more on your prayers because you're in the midst of your prayers, right? You're in the midst of saying Shema. Imagine you're in the midst of saying Shema. You can't even talk to the guy right there, right? And there's no point because you're not going to you're not going to bring that person to any place of good, right? So you just gotta dig deeper inside of yourself and find more power, because God, the reason why God's doing this is he's vesting into klipa, because God creates an equilibrium in everything in this world. So he's vesting in that klipa in order that I could dig deeper inside of me, in order that I could concentrate even more. Even more. So by the way, the more you concentrate on your davening, you know what happens? The more negative thoughts come to you. The very fact that the more you concentrate means that, because there has to be an equilibrium of the good and the bad. So the less you are concentrated, the more you're going on stream of consciousness. So the other side doesn't have to use much negative power to derail you, because you're anyways, daydreaming, right? But the more you're really focused, the more it's going to come. It's going to be more of a challenge. And you're going to see like wild thoughts coming into your head that you're like, where's this coming from? I'm praying, and where's this wild thought coming in my head? You know why? Because it's got to be a stronger power in order to try to derail me. And that's what this heathen, this pagan heathen that we're talking about, right? So when you recognize that this is the fact, and that the only reason it's happening is in order that I can dig deeper inside of me. So the same thing is that someone who, I'm not praying, but someone publicly said something negative to me. So obviously it was a message I'm supposed to hear. So, imagine it was once by dollars, which is somewhat public, right? They're ever giving out dollars. I'm sure also today's Sunday dollars. And there was someone who was a little kind of off kind of person, whatever, chutzpah, and he comes to the Rebbe and says, Rebbe, I'm disappointed in you. Imagine saying that to the Rebbe. Like, everybody around there wanted to sink into the earth, like feeling like. So the Rebbe was, I'm also disappointed in myself.
That's what the Rebbe said.
That's what the Rebbe said, responded to him. What a humility. Imagine that. And the Rebbe wasn't saying that as like, just to come back. He meant what he said.
But the example you're giving of someone is insulting you And what you're saying is the person being insulted should focus more on their prayer and therefore, in a sense, ignore it.
Not in a
So-
sense, completely ignore it. Yeah.
Okay, so isn't that an example or a case of passive aggressiveness?
Not at all. What's passive
Well,
aggressive?
because in a sense, you're ignoring the person. Passive aggressive is when you
Well, sometimes you
ignore
need,
the comment that a person gives and you ignore the person completely.
well,
You
maybe.
ignore the person tomorrow, next
Whoa,
week, next month.
no, one second, one
That's
second.
passive
One
aggressive.
second, Shimmerley. Take one thing at a time, and don't extrapolate into something you don't know what you know. You're just
Right.
extrapolating into something that is just in hot air. Don't do that. Just like we're talking right this moment. This is the godly approach. This person is a pagan who's just doing it to be disruptive, not doing it because, oh, could you please teach me Torah? He's not coming and please teach me Torah. I want to know the truth. He's coming to you and says, what are you doing? Stop your prayers. Come on, get a life. Go out and have a good time in life. What kind of stupidity are you doing? That's what we're talking about. To that you answer? No, you ignore it. That person doesn't deserve a response, right? Now, likewise, it could be someone who insults you. Maybe the way it is to ignore it, right? Maybe, whatever. The point is that you've got to choose not to be responsive to the person, but to choose to do the godly thing. When you will recognize that this is coming from God because you meditate upon the Shekhinah, that is the spark of the Shekhinah is now in Klippa, and that Klippa is in exile, giving the power to this person to say what they said. Now, it gives me the power. It gives me the positioning that I'm not being responsive to this person. I'm not going to be tit for tat or any of that sort because I recognize this is coming from God and now I need to respond in the godly way, whatever that means. Here it means ignore the person. Ignore the person and just dig deeper inside of yourself so you can meditate, you can pray much more strongly than before. Does that make sense? Now, in another given situation, does it mean if you're acting passive aggressive, oh, who's he think he is? I'm just going to ignore him. That means you're responding to that person. You're not responding to the godly moment that's here. That's passive aggressive. But if you meditate upon it, you know that this is coming from God, and therefore it behooves me to act in a divine way. Like the Rebbe said, I am also disappointed in myself, whatever that means, whatever, let's not go there. It doesn't matter, right? But whatever that godly way will be, okay? If it's I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to teach him a lesson. I'm going to ignore him now for another month. Then that means you responded to it was tit for tat. It wasn't literally tit for tat. So you didn't go down to his level, but you responded rather than recognizing this is from God. And what's the godly response? Make sense?
But when you're doing that godly response and your prayers are becoming more intense and you're handling it exactly the right way, then are you removing the godliness from like the clip of the person, and two, are you like therefore elevating that person into like a vessel for goodness?
I don't know if necessarily maybe you might be elevating. I don't think you're not elevating that person, and you're elevating that moment. You're elevating those words that were right. You're elevating the person. I don't think you're elevating
are
the
you
person.
removing the spark?
I mean, perhaps the person then will recognize through this, this person is, acting in a
Probably not.
probably not, but if the
Maybe.
person, well, whatever, but not the person, the situation,
Okay.
right? The state of exile of those words, you've elevated it in the fact that you now used it. You've used this in a beneficial, healthy, godly way.
But you haven't broken the shell of the keep by animating the other person.
Yeah.
No.
Can
no,
can I break your shell? Can you break my shell?
I guess not.
No,
That's
we have
the
to break
point.
our own shell,
Yeah.
right? I can't eat for you. I can't live for you. I
Okay.
can't, right? I can help you.
Yeah,
So the help here for this pagan is not paying attention to him.
yeah,
That he realizes, oh, maybe I misspoke,
yeah,
right? Maybe, maybe I was just like,
yeah.
trying to manipulate and play a game over here, right? Maybe not, whatever. That's totally not in our hands.
Yeah.
You got another example?
Go ahead. You
No, I'm asking. Could you give another example?
another example, sure. It doesn't have to, a situation could be, right? You've got to go, you've got an important meeting to go to, and you're held up in traffic, and you're going to miss your meeting or you're going to miss your flight, right? Who created this reality?
God.
God created. So meditate upon the fact that what's happening right now, God is creating this reality, right? It's not random. He's creating this reality for me. And therefore, I have to dig deep inside of me and to recognize this, and therefore not get upset, not get frustrated. I'm going to miss my flight, or I'm going to miss an important meeting, or whatever the case might be, right? And recognize that this is coming, God animating this moment. It's in exile, it's in klipa, because you don't see the godliness in the moment, right? You don't see the godliness in the moment, because godliness would be, well, I made the flight. Godliness would be, I made the meeting and I made the big deal. I got a big deal, and now I was able to give, which I promised to give tzedakah to Chabad. And now I might not be able to give that tzedakah to Chabad, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it would, be come up to, right? That you recognize this is coming from, this is God animating this moment, creating this reality, and they've meditate upon that, and therefore not be frustrated or angry at all.
But the problem also is if you don't respond, for example, in any way, then the person who gave the insult, for example, he's never going to know that he even gave you an insult. He could just go on, continue with life, insulting other people in a similar manner. So I don't know the answer to that.
Well, wait a second.
I mean,
Wait.
Because if you don't say anything,
One
if you
second.
don't say anything, the person will pass you by
Shimalay, we just,
and
one
be in the same
second.
situation.
So
So
Shimalay,
he's not going to improve.
Shimalay, we got the,
And you're going to be
Shimalay,
with your passive aggressiveness,
that's
which
not passive
accomplishes
aggressive.
nothing.
No. Shimalay, we got the answer.
Well,
The answer is,
you know what I'm talking about anyways.
no, we got the answer very simply here. Yeah, but listen to the principle and guide by the principle. You know what you're trying to do? Manipulate a situation, right? And that's where the problem is. Don't manipulate the situation. Be responsive that this is God creating this, giving the vitality to this person to say what they did. When you recognize that, I'm going to then deal with it in the responsible divine way. Whatever that means, that's the principle. Guide by the principle, not about is your responsibility to shed light on that person that they know that they did something wrong? Maybe. And if that's the case, and then that's a godly thing. And it could be that it's not. In this case, with the pagan who is disruptive, it's not your job to do that because they're not ready to hear. So it might be also that person who insulted you, they're not in a place right now to hear because maybe they're going through something. And the reason why they did that is they're going through something and they're, acting out, right? So right now might not be the time. Maybe another time would be, maybe not. But that will be based on not being reactionary, but based on recognizing that God created this moment for me to act in the divine way. Divine way might be able to say something to that person, or might not be. but you have to base on the principle, not on, oh, this guy's going to act this way forevermore. That's manipulating. That's manipulating somebody, right? To that they should act in a certain way. That's not my job's not to manipulate a person to act in a certain way. My job, if it is my job, is to guide that person, to teach that person, if they're ready to be taught and by me. If they're not going to be able to be taught by me, right? And maybe that's why they said what they did, because they're, not ready to hear from me. So then don't say. Maybe someone else will say it, right? It's not your job then. That's
All right.
completely legitimate.
But
But again, what's important to come away with is the principle over here. The principle is God created this moment. So it's a Kodak moment. If it's a Kodak moment that God created, let me respond in a perfect Kodak way. In other words, in a divine way, that I'm not at all manipulating the situation. I'm not at all being manipulated by the situation. That's godly. That's recognizing that God gave the power to this person to say what they did. God gave the power to create this situation that it is, and I am not manipulated by it, and I'm not manipulating it. That is heavenly. Is that clear?
But there would be, in the instance that it was a Jew disrupting you, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the concept right. If let's say a Jew comes up and insults you, if it's just because like you feel like hurt by the insult or whatever, then like you shouldn't respond in anger. But if you start getting angry because wow, this Jew is going against like Torah principle, or a Jew steals from you, this Jew is stealing, the God commands us not to steal. Like I'm angry that he's stealing, not because he's took from me, but because he was going against God, then you could be angry at him.
You gotta be careful with that, because maybe,
There's some ulterior.
yeah, maybe you're not being honest with yourself, first of all. And, Moshe Rabbeinu in the moment is angry. He's completely aligned with the divine. We're not. So, that might be our excuse for the anger. You have to be careful with that.
So really,
I'm not saying not that you shouldn't,
yeah.
but why respond in anger, rather respond in a way that you can teach the person something. Okay, why not?
You told me
I like. I'm not.
on numerous occasions
Leslie, thank you.
that, wherever I was, God was out. God was there to give me a lesson, to teach me a lesson of
Yeah,
humility.
absolutely.
So really, in effect, there's very, very, very few, if not basically for like no situations where anger is appropriate for people like us who have, who have ulterior.
No, sometimes it is appropriate, but go through the process. What the mistake and what your question is you're not processing the principle.
Mhm.
You're coming to the conclusion of something, right? Why are you starting with the conclusion? Process what we just learned, and then maybe it is maybe it is. Maybe sometimes you got to show anger rather than be angered, right? Because maybe that is the right thing. But that's after you've processed that this is the godly way to do it.
Yeah.
That I'm not being reactionary, right? That's the point over here.
Yeah.
You got to be careful. The very fact that you said it that way, that's why I challenged it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because we're not processing the point. Take the principle, live the principle, live with it. Then that will be a more of a testimony for ourselves, right? That we live with, that we process this way, that maybe what comes out on the other side is divine, right?
Yeah.
That's really important. Is it making sense, Shimon Light? I hope
You
it's
say
making,
so.
huh?
You say so.
You're just
No.
you're just recognizing in the moment that it's coming from God. It's a situation that is orchestrated by Him, and you're just proceeding in a very rational way.
And then
You're
what do you need from me, God, in this situation?
Yeah,
What do you need from me?
you're praying.
So if it's the pagan that's disruptive and there's no lesson to teach him, just concentrate further. If it's a Jew who just is like acting in a way that they could be taught,
Yeah,
so then maybe I have to teach them something. So the question is how to teach them. Is my anger going to teach them, or is my
gentle rebuke.
gentle rebuke going to teach them?
Yeah,
Right?
Someone like my wife, for example, would say to approach the person and to explain that you were hurt, you felt hurt by the comment that was made. In other words, a comment is made that's an insult. Okay, and so in effect, you're hurt by it. And by-
One second,
by-
one second, one
By
second.
telling
What
the
are we learning
person-
over here? Are you hurt by it?
Sorry?
According to what we learned over here. I'm
Because-
asking you, according to what we learned here. I'm not talking about modern day psychology and therapy and social workers. That's not what this is not Tanya. This is Tanya. This is not, self-help books that, come and go, that they have their day up in the, we're talking about the truth of Torah. And that's a very different thing than self-help books that, each one have a glimmer of truth, but they're not the truth. This is the truth. The truth is, if it's coming for God as meant for you, it's good for you. That means I've got to deal with this in a good and healthy way. If I'm hurt by it, right?
It also depends how,
Right.
what is being, anyway, it doesn't matter.
And it depends,
Too late now.
right? Okay, we got some questions over here. If you are abused, is turning the other cheek the divine way? This is not turning the other cheek, by the way. This is not called turning the other cheek. This is Jewish. That's a non-Jewish idea. That is not at all what we're talking about. So if you're abused, again, the process over here is what's clear and important.
You should turn to the left or
Right?
right.
Why is God silent when men kill each other? Where does the power begin and where does it end? My brother's keeper is a very different quote from the phrase of the Torah. Is it my responsibility to worry about bad deeds of others? Or isn't it God's to at the
I gotta go.
bad deeds of others? Or isn't it God's to, the very least, is shared responsibility? All right.
sorry.
Good night, TRC. We're going to deal with this. Okay, Jeff.
you very
We'll see you later. All right, folks. Amazing. You're all
Yeah.
amazing.